Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down Predators. Releasing 20 years after Predator 2, the sequel had a long tumultuous journey, but it was worth the wait and has since become a fan favourite amongst the Predator community.
Why don't you have a seat right on that stool, please?
Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. What Predators did though is capture the feel of the original, and it took things back to the jungle, which was absolutely incredible after the Aliens vs Predator movies. Instead of a bunch of mercenaries ordered by the CIA, we have a bunch of hardened killers captured by the Ucha, hunted for sport on one of their game planets. I absolutely love the concept behind it, and it may inspire something down the line, which we'll have to see. On a side note though, I hope that when we eventually get that all-star team-up tease at the end of Killer of Killers, that they basically use a big game planet with lots of different characters. So far, no Predator characters have really returned for a sequel, and I'd love to see an Avengers-type movie with lots of different characters. Naru, Dutch, Harrigan, maybe even bring in Ripley if it's animated, yeah. I think that would be excellent. But back to this movie. 20 years in between was a big wait, but they actually had it locked down very early. If you've seen our Predator 2 video, then you'll know they were planning a quadrilogy. Robert Rodriguez was actually scooped up in 1994 while he was working on Desperado. He basically made the film that we get here, but it was seen as being too expensive and thus was just tabled. Which kind of makes sense due to Predator 2 underperforming and the fact the technology to make this didn't really exist yet. Rodriguez explained in the behind-the-scenes documentary that it seemed more like Avatar than the final product that we got. It was a fantastical world filled with monsters and different creatures, and danger and death around every corner. He also wanted predators riding bikes, drinking beer, and watching fights in a coliseum, which, yeah, it was certainly a choice. That Coliseum idea, though, did live on in Killer of Killers, and I did wonder if they took that from his original pitch. Dutch was also wanted for the film as well. He was going to be captured and basically forced to fight like a gladiator. Though we didn't get that, you can of course see some of the DNA in the reveal of the Hunted being in space and the dogs and different creatures used here. But yeah, very expensive back in 1994. Thus, the studio instead went with AVP. Both it and its sequel were panned at the time, but you better believe we will be breaking down those movies. Yep, I am willing to make the great sacrifice for you great people. Because of those films though, the studio felt like they'd run both franchises into the ground. For Alien, they'd end up soft rebooting with Prometheus and going back to Ridley Scott. For Predator though, they went back through the scripts, and this is when they came across that initial draft. Calling up Rodriguez, they begged and begged and begged.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
They said that this is where they should have gone in the first place, and it's where they wanted to go going forward. Now, I'll be honest, learning how old the script was really surprising. This definitely has that requel tone, but it's clear that at the time they were working with this idea before that was ever really in vogue. I do wonder what they reworked in the end though, because there are moments that feel like it retreads the original fairly heavily. We've got a man standing his ground complete with a blade, a minigun shooting into the jungle, a failed attempt at a kill box, and just jungle stuff. Even with all that though, I feel like the movie felt very fresh and interesting when it came out. The name takes on a double meaning as well, as it can mean either the characters or the creatures. For as enthusiastic as the studio seemed at the time though, they also felt that it needed some changes. Thus, Rodriguez was given 10 days to fix the script. So no pressure! They also called it Predators to play off how the sequel to Alien was Aliens. They wanted to make it seem like a direct successor to the first film and hope that people might even skip the second. Kind of what they do now, where they miss out sequels and do direct follow-ons from the originals. Looking at you, Terminator. Now, though Rodriguez had written it, he decided to step back from being director. Neil Marshall, MJ Bassett, Marcus Nispel, Peter Berg, Darren Lynn Bousman, and the star of the original Bill Duke, they were all in the running to direct this movie. In the end, they hired Nimrod Antal, who made his name on the movie Control. If you're from Newcastle, yeah, a Nimrod, if you call someone a Nimrod, it's an insult, so do find it funny reading that name. But I'm not a racist. Far from it, in fact. Rodriguez was impressed with his work on that, though, and how much he'd done with such a low budget. The movie was made for a relatively modest $40 million, with movies like Dial of Destiny costing like $300 million these days. It does kind of feel like it's time we return to lower budget stuff. Nimrod tried to be as faithful to the original as possible, though, and wanted a guy in a costume instead of CGI characters. Having watched every piece of the behind the scenes on the first two films, Predators definitely feels like they were making it in the same vein. The prop and costume department really tried to stick to the original as much as possible and had a very similar ethos. KNB EFX's Howard Berger and Greg Nicotero made the suit with some digital aid from Weta. Yep, that Greg Nicotero, the legend who learnt the trade from fellow legend Tom Savini. Rodriguez was also intent on getting a solid ensemble cast that could really act. The aim was to have characters who all felt they could lead their own movie, which I do think they accomplished, though I know people don't like the casting of Adrien Brody. I feel across the board though that the names they get here are fantastic, and most of them have become big names in the industry. Now, filming of the movie took 53 days and was mostly shot in Hawaii. The island was chosen as it's one of the newest islands and looks very alien due to its volcanic nature. They also shot in Texas, and it continues the trend of Robert Rodriguez productions being filmed in the Lone Star State. It makes sense as well, as his Troublemaker Studios is actually located in Austin, Texas. Now, from the studio, the mandate for the movie was that they could only reference the original film, so that means no nods to Predator 2, or hell, even the expanded lore. We won't be getting the pistol popping up. Put the pistol away! They also loved how in the original the creature didn't first appear until the 37-minute mark, and actually stole this one to be around the 40-minute mark, if you don't count the heat vision. The soundtrack was also inspired by Alan Silvestri's work on the original. He couldn't work on this film due to working on the A-Team, so John Debney, who did Sin City with Rodriguez, was chosen to replace him. What he does though is capture that tone perfectly, and yeah, feels like a spiritual successor to the original. Whoa! So, we begin with Royce falling to the ground. I love how this thematically works to not only drop the characters in at the deep end, but also the audience. Like the characters, we'd been dragged against our will through those AVP movies, but this let us know they weren't messing around. That first film was about your typical action guys discovering they were in a sci-fi horror, whereas here we know straight away. One detail I also love is that the Predator control is seen right from the off. Royce desperately tries to hit the device on his chest, but it won't respond or activate the parachute. It powers itself on, and it's clearly them pulling the strings. Literally. It kickstarts the movie by immediately grabbing your attention, and then boom, hard cut to title. This is how you do it. Looking at his uniform, we can also see he's been part of the US military. However, as we later learn, he's actually a mercenary. Later on, we see the body of Drake, who we learn was also part of America's Special Forces. But the pair have similar uniforms. It's not too long before they come across a guy on the ground as well, and they actually had a deleted scene on the Blu-ray where we see his parachute only activates just as he lands. He's part of the army as well, and yeah, it all kind of ties in this idea that they're picking off some big targets for the big game. Now, the device on Royce's chest is indeed an altimeter, which detects when people are at a certain height. I love the fact that the unnamed soldier dies this way as well, as it just instantly lets you know that characters can die at any moment, even before the game starts. Either way, it's a world away from the slow intro of the original, as the team get off the chopper and then fast rope into the jungle. Now, jumping in at the deep end like this, you know, it's always something that's going to be risky, and they actually went back and forth on how to handle this opening. This would reveal they were on a planet, talk about who the characters are, but I like that you kind of discover these things throughout the movie. Just works a lot better. Like the characters, we're just dumped in there as well, and we learn what's going on as they do. Now, Adrien Brody, again, he's one of those castings that's pretty controversial. Whenever you hear someone talk about the movie, the chances are the phrase miscast will be thrown around at some point. After his Oscar win for The Pianist in 2002 though, Hollywood were clearly trying to push him as a leading man. That had been seen in films like King Kong and this. However, he also had stuff like The Village, which yeah... Simple Jack, that's all I'll say. Breakdown on the channel now. The guy clearly put in work for this movie though, and he got simply jacked. Simply jacked! Now, for the first film, Arnie actually slimmed down to play a more realistic Special Forces figure, but I think Brody fits the body type a lot better, even though he doesn't necessarily come across as convincing as Schwarzenegger did. But yeah, having like a Mr. Olympia, when's he got time to exercise and work out? He's in the jungle for days, not eating anything. Yeah, so the slimmed down tone, I think just works a bit better. But let me know below if you disagree. Brody's acting ability though, I think it really makes him believable. He's someone who fits into the position of the leader of this group, even though he's not as muscle bound as Dutch. There's some gravitas and authority there though that I think works really well, but obviously, I'm well aware people think it's a miscast, so if you do, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And the other choices for this were Freddie Rodriguez and Josh Brolin, and I would have actually loved to have seen him in the role as well. As for the character himself though, we actually know a lot about him due to the comic Predators: A Predatory Life. Royce is a mercenary who blew up a building in the Philippines thinking it was housing a terrorist group. Though that was indeed the case, it actually also contained a school in the basement. Women and children were killed in the blast, and it messed Royce up to the point he just felt completely shut off from humanity. However, this actually helped his career going forward. His employers saw him as a ruthless assassin that would complete the job no matter who got in the way. Thus, they were willing to pay premium and sign up to our membership for 99 cents a month, where you get early access to our videos. From this point on though, he was employed to do a big job in Africa. This involved him working for a warlord and cleaning up all the rebels that opposed him. Figuring he'd be killed after the job was completed, he demanded 66% up front. He was also sent in with a guide who he suspected was supposed to kill him when the job was done. So he murdered him before that could happen and dumped his body before tracking the rebels in the jungle. While observing their camp, he also noticed several Western soldiers, including an old friend Travis. Royce killed most of the group and then drew the others and his friend away from the village. He then infiltrated it and held the rebel leader at gunpoint before killing him. However, during this, a woman with her child startled him and Brody shot her in surprise. His buddy then returned along with his men, and Royce used the woman and her crying child to trick them into a hunt. Using bait is something that repeats throughout the movie, and yeah, he does use live bait, which was nicely set up there. He then killed most of the group before tracking his old pal Travis into the jungle. After realizing that the men who hired Royce were as bad as the ones he was told to kill, he shot Travis before leaving the jungle. Now, during this entire thing, he'd actually been stalked by a predator known as the Tracker. This is the dog handler in the movie, and he's also known as a Flusher. He subdued Royce and then took him to the planet. This comic is definitely worth checking out if you enjoyed the movie, and it basically fills in a lot of the different backstories, including Ronald Noland, who we'll talk about more in just a bit. If you want to watch it though, we also have Moments of Extraction, which is sort of a motion comic that was released on the Blu-ray. Either way, I think Brody's past actually hints at what this place might be a metaphor for. When looking at the entire franchise, it's possible that this is a place that tests the dishonorable. I thought about this after recently watching Killer of Killers and how Ursa killed an unarmed man, which was said to damn her soul. The Predators are all about honor, and thus killing unarmed people, women and children, that's a big no-no. As we learn, all the characters have checkered pasts and things that they're trying to make up for. It's even theorized by the group at one point that the game preserve's actually hell, but I think on a metaphor level that it's actually a sort of purgatory. To me, I definitely think the reader's there that this place is where the dishonorable are taken to try and win a second chance at life. Though the survivors don't get zapped back to Earth, I do like the metaphor that it's a place where damned souls are tested once more. Either way, he's rocking a double A12 shotgun. It's an absolute beast of a weapon with zero recoil. Speaking of weapons, we next see Danny Trejo as Chichilo, which is Spanish for knife. Weirdly, a lot of his characters have been named after weapons, such as Machete, Razor Eddie, and Navajas. Now he drops in and says, "Hijo de chingada madre!" or sons of bitches in English apparently. Danny had worked with Robert Rodriguez on Desperado, and he of course went in to be in the Machete trailer of Grindhouse before getting 2 spin-offs from that. He also starred in his Spy Kids franchise, and at one point the pair discovered they were second cousins. The script actually described Chichilo as someone who looks exactly like Danny Trejo, so yeah, it's perfect casting. Upon hearing about this role going around in Hollywood, apparently called Robert Rodriguez up and said, "Look, I heard there's someone that you need who looks like Danny Trejo. I look just like Danny Trejo." Now, Chichilo is actually a Mexican cartel enforcer for the Los Zetas cartel. Raised in poverty and seeing his brother die in front of him, this led him to a life of crime. Just in the moments before being picked up, he was attacking a police station and was subsequently captured by the Tracker, which is why he's reacting this way. The moment of tension is then cut as the minigun opens up the jungle. Now it follows the classic motif of miniguns in movies not actually managing to hit anyone, which Weekly Planet pointed that out once, and since then, can't think of anything else when I watch a minigun moment. It's a minigun minute, I think it is. Either way, it's a clear call back to Blaine and Old Painless. However, this guy unfortunately does have chewing tobacco to make you a goddamn sexual Tyrannosaurus. Originally, the crew though wanted to use the Russian GSHG 7.62, but were unable to source one. So they had to go for the American minigun instead, but yeah, I think it works better because it's obviously the same gun from that film. I think. Looks the same. As we discover, this is fired by Nikolai, who's played by Oleg Taktarov. He was a UFC fighter who made his debut at UFC 5. He's had quite a nice career and has even acted opposite Danny Trejo and Walton Goggins again after this movie came out. Now in the expanded lore, we learned he was a Russian soldier in the Spetsnaz. Turned out he was guilty of committing war crimes, and this happened during the Second Chechen War. That plays into this idea of redemption again, and it was shortly after that that the Yucha picked him up. Now one of the drafts actually lists him as a Russian VDV Airborne Corps, so he probably found the parachute stuff a breeze, and this is why he likely got armed so fast upon landing. It also explains his stripy top, as they are known to wear this. It's also sort of a switch up from the first movie, as the Russians were the ones funding the rebels, whereas here they end up working together. Each one of them remembers seeing a bright light and then waking up falling. It's thought that when you die that you see a big bright light, so again, the interpretations of Purgatory are indeed there. As we learn in Killer of Killers though, these captives are put in stasis and thus they aren't conscious in the trip. The stasis puts them in suspended animation and thus they also weren't grabbed at the same time. That film of course had characters from across the centuries, but I do get the feeling these were from around the same time. The group then meet Isabel, who's an IDF sniper played by Alice Braga. Isabel grew up in St. Mary Magdalene's Catholic school for girls before she then faced mandatory recruitment. In a deleted scene, Chichilo said he thought they didn't let bitches be snipers, which she then replied with, "Is that why they didn't take you?" It's a funny moment, yeah, and it kind of played off the scene in Aliens with Vasquez.
Hey Vasquez, have you ever been mistaken for a man?
No. Have you?
Though it was cut from the final film, you can actually find that line in the comic for the film. Now there we learn she was tasked with killing a target's wife in Afghanistan. This led to her firing upon the woman as she stood next to her infant child, which she felt a lot of guilt over. Isabel believes that she's going to hell because of this and that her soul's been damned. Isabel was then dispatched to Guatemala with her spotter Isaac. The pair were ambushed, and though she managed to escape, Isaac was brutally killed. Isabel watched while this happened, which also weighs heavily on her. Fleeing back to her camp, Isabel then found her allies dead, clearly being butchered by something supernatural. Isabel was then captured and declared AWOL by the IDF. To train for the role, Alice would practice firing the gun and reading lots of sniper manuals. She pretty much becomes the second lead in the movie, and we'll talk about her character more as we get through the film. Now, she instantly spots that things are off, as she's been to pretty much every jungle throughout her career, and this one doesn't seem like it's on Earth. She later also talks about the mission from the first film and sort of fills in the info for the characters. We then see Hanzo Kamakami, played by Louise Ozawa Gamchien. Think I got that right. I'm proud to be stupid. This actor actually voiced Kenji and Kayoshi Kamakami in Predator Killer of Killers, so it's great seeing him here as well. The surnames are obviously the same as well, and it's likely to highlight he's one of their descendants. So maybe he got back at the end of Killer of Killers. He's dressed in a very sharp suit though, and you can see he's missing part of his fingers as he takes his shoes off, which we will discuss later on. Just having a suit in general, I respect the hell out of, and I will break mine out for any excuse. As you may have guessed, his name's also a reference to Hattori Hanzo, the legendary Japanese swordsman that you probably know from Kill Bill. Rodriguez and Tarantino are of course very close friends, so this may be why he brought across that bit of trivia. Breakdown on the channel now as well. However, Hanzo is also a legendary swordsman from real life. It's possible that the sword we see was even made by the figure, and this was picked for the film due to Louise being skilled in kendo. Now we learn as a child that Hanzo visited a mystic who said he was born 1,000 years too late, clearly referencing how he was better suited to living in the era of the samurai. It's also possible that, if he is his descendant of the characters from Killer of Killers, that he got back and he was out of time, so this guy's out of time as well. Maybe it's his son. Enough of the theory time though. What we do know about the character is that he killed a woman in Tokyo and an entire squad of ninja in 1993. He then had the ritual of Yubitsumu done, which led to parts of his fingers being cut off. This is intended to weaken the swordsman and is a form of making amends for a mistake. It would be a punishment not only for you losing part of your fingers, but also impede you as a swordsman. However, he has no problem using his weapon later in the movie. Now Hanzo was taken by the Predators after successfully operating a hit on a businessman in Tokyo, hence why he's dressed as good as he is. Out of all the deaths, I feel he has the best one, with it probably being the most memorable in the movie. We then see Mombasa attack stands, which is something that continues throughout the movie. Mombasa is an RUF soldier from Sierra Leone played by Mahershala Ali. A neat detail is that his character is a Muslim, and it's possible Ali brought this across himself as he also follows the religion. Now, from the expanded lore, we know his father was a fighter and his mother was a child bride, with her dying the day he was born. He was then recruited as a child soldier, with him being forced into conflict for several decades. This led to a confrontation in 2010 where he came face to face with a child soldier. Seeing himself in the boy, he hesitated before then gunning him down. In his mind, this sealed his fate and made him realize he deserved death. As for Stans, he's a mass murderer, having killed 24 people. Well, that he was found guilty of. It is thought to be in the 30s though. Played by the iconic Walton Goggins, he brings a lot to the role. Now, the character's full name is Walter Stans, and this is not only a nod to the actor, but also the character Walter Golik. Golik was an inmate in Alien 3, and it's a little tip of the hat to that. In a cutscene, we actually had him discuss his killings with Chichilo, and Chichilo basically said how Stans is the worst as he at least kills for money. His entire part was apparently rewritten after the casting, as reportedly he was too much like Hudson from Aliens. However, I do feel like that DNA is still there, which we'll discuss more in just a bit. We discover that while awaiting his execution in San Quentin State Prison, he was taken by the Predators. Then they find Edwin's hanging upside down. Might be a reach here, but it's similar how Dutch and his crew actually find the helicopter crew strung upside down. Edwards is a bit more skin-tacked than they were though. Played by Topher Grace, he's the wimpiest of the bunch, on the surface level at least. Edwins is a doctor, but he's harboring a dark secret. Often, when we do these videos, I try and come up with a creative costume, but I'm just a regular bloke today, just a regular doctor. These are my normal clothes. I'm a predator, not...
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Nah, but Edwins is a serial killer and cannibal who is accused of multiple counts of medical malpractice. In the adaptation comic, he actually cuts off a bit of Isabel and eats it, which is really messed up and probably too gross to bring across to the movie. He's asked if he has anything to cut himself down with, to which he says no. We later learn that he has a surgical knife, and this is the first of his many lies. I absolutely love the way Grace plays it as well, and he's kind of the nerdy guy you want to protect.
Could someone please just tell me, what the fuck is going on here?
We then see a bunch of trophies next to a striped structure. This is the totem which we later see is used on the Ucha victims. Skulls are left by the side, and the behind-the-scenes documentary explained how the camp later on had added inspiration of some of the atrocities in Hungary. I also wondered if this totem was intended to look brutalist. Ironically, Adrian Brody would win an Oscar for playing a Hungarian architect in The Brutalist, so it's all connected as we always say. Mombasa explains though how in his culture, the one with the most trophies is regarded as the leader. Chichilo also touches upon his own methods and says how this entire thing could be a ransom. Like, he even goes into how he'd put people in oil drums and set them on fire if the ransom wasn't paid. Lovely that. Like, Topher Grace's reaction here is hilarious. Stans also suspects it's an experiment being carried out on prisoners to test behaviour. That in itself could be from real life and even playing off the Stanford prison experiment.
This is hell.
Did you wake up as Ryan Airy or something, eh? Either way, Royce decides to just go to the high ground and become the de facto leader of the group. Cut from the movie was a moment where Stans argued with everyone and basically walked off to go and fend for himself. However, he realised it was a bad idea and quickly tootled back after the group, which you can kind of see at this moment as he rejoins them. Edwin then shows off his usefulness as he stops Nikolai from being paralysed, and the plant seems to be one from Earth. Specifically, the Archifructus ailangogenes.
Archifructus leonogensis.
Yeah, which is what I said. It's actually been extinct for a very, very long time though, and was found in a fossil in China. Now, putting on our film analysis hat, Edwin is similar to the plant in a way. He's someone who looks harmless at first and actually lures people in. Plants like this attract prey by seeming pleasant, but once they open up, they're very, very deadly, just like the character is. Edwin wins the trust of the group here, as he seems like he's more than just out for himself. But it's all a play used to draw them in, and I love how they play him like the real predator in the group. From this, he also gets a neurotoxin on his knife, which he uses against Isabel. We then see them walk around an interesting geological surface, and the volcanic island really makes it look alien here. It's here that we truly get a sense of the characters, and Isabel even asks Royce his name.
You got a name?
He shuts us down pretty quick, and we don't even learn he's called Royce until like right at the end of the movie. I think that kind of sums up the film though, and the Now Playing podcast in their review, they said that they're caricatures rather than straight up characters. Everyone is kind of a type you've seen in an action movie before, but honestly, works really well. Isabella makes a primitive magnet and realizes that it's not pointing north or south. The sun also hasn't moved at all, and yeah, something strange is going on. We also see Mombasa praying, but due to the compass showing there's no real north or south, it's unlikely that he's doing it in the right direction. So it kind of shows how everything's slightly askew in this almost purgatory state. Royce then realizes that they've been chosen as they're all serious killers, except for Edwin. Which, yeah, is this not raising any red flags? Isabel and Royce have an uneasy alliance here, as she judges him for being a mercenary. As he later says, though, she does what she does for her country, and he just does it for money, and really they're the same kind of people. Obviously, you know, recently there's been a lot of political back and forth around the IDF, and it adds a lot of complexity to the film, especially viewing it today. Like, I was even unsure whether to bring that up, but it definitely gives the film a feeling that it's still relevant even after all these years. They then find a broken cage and parachute. The production design has some really great consistency here, as the cage has white stripes on it like the totem did earlier. Now we learn that inside the cage was a hellhound that's sent to go and lure the killers out. It's basically like hounds when you go fox hunting. Animals have been used to test prey before in the prior films, as in the first movie we had the predator sending in a wild boar, which Royce even sort of gives a nod to when he says it's like a boar later. The Predator tracker uses them to hunt though, and they look similar to the Kerns from the game Aliens vs Predator Extinction. You might also have noticed one of their skulls in the trophy room of Predator 2, which the production team brought across to this. This makes me think that killing one's a coming of age test that all aspiring Yucha must pass. Similar to how young Spartans were thought to go into the wilderness and survive against wild wolves. Noticing that there's lots of cages in the trees, I love the eerie feeling as they slowly spot them. However, the group are actually trapped by one of Ronald's device which easily seizes them. There's a tripwire, falling weight, and collapsing tree along with some spikes that pepper the ground. These are all things that Dutch used in the first film, and I love this callback. They're pretty much overkill, and as we learn, are designed to hunt much heavier prey. He was obviously engaging in guerrilla warfare against the predators and thus needed much bigger traps. We then see our girl Isabel fall into a punji trap. These were used heavily in the Vietnam War, and no doubt Ronald learned about them with his experience fighting the Viet Cong. It's at this point though that they come across Drake. He was actually featured in the Predators prequel comic Welcome to the Jungle! Beyond that, he was also referenced to Private Drake in Aliens, and is similar to the Green Berets they come across in the first film. Side note, when googling Drake Predators, it actually brought up a Kendrick Lamar song, which killed me a bit. Now though they say,
we triggered a dead man's trap.
This isn't necessarily the case. Drake was actually part of the previous season, and he was kidnapped while stationed in Afghanistan. Soldiers stormed the building he was in, including one with an explosive vest, who blew themselves up amidst his squad. They all blacked out and woke up in free fall over the jungle. Upon landing, the team were wiped out, which is when Drake came across Noland. He confirmed he'd been there for years, which is a question I know a lot of people have about the movie. Due to him saying that it's been 7 to 10 seasons, you would think that's about a decade. However, when people parachute in at the end, it makes you wonder how long a season actually is, because this movie seems like it takes place over a couple of days. However, the comic confirms it was indeed about a decade. Noland then took Drake back to his hideout and tried to get him to help fight back. Seeing him as unhinged, Drake instead stole a smart disc to do things himself. Upon heading out into the jungle though, he found shelter, only to realise it was the lair of a giant insect. This then attacked him, which is when Noland arrived to retrieve the disc. Finally deciding to work together, they managed to trap a predator and cage it. This was to draw predators in so they could spring the traps we see here. Drake was then awakened in the night at one point, which is when he was captured by the super predators. They are then thought to have blown the hole in his chest with a plasma caster, which we can't show because YouTube be dicks, mate. Noland never got involved though, as he only knows how to survive by hiding. The comics do confirm Drake's been dead for 2 weeks though, which is something Edwin points out here.
It's 2 weeks, judging from the rate of decomposition.
Billy then says there was a firefight, and we get a similar line to the first film.
They were shooting in all directions.
Shooting in all directions.
Mombasa then spots something. It's similar to how Billy saw something in the jungle, and in the book it said that he had a sixth sense. We then get a focus on the tree, and if you pay close attention to the branch on the left, you can actually see the cloak of the creature. This was the first time I ever noticed it, but it stood there shimmering slightly. I know it's very subtle. It is definitely there. We then finally get the heat vision point of view, which is something that was of course in the first film. It's been upgraded though, so you can now make out details, and instead of the first film, which is like, don't know how you saw shit, mate. The Predator also records a noise and plays this back just like the original film. They then make their way across the terrain and learn they weren't actually on Earth all along. Like a reverse Planet of the Apes. The planets we see are a gas-like body similar to Jupiter, and we get one that looks like Earth's moon, meaning that they might actually be on a moon instead of a planet. The gas planet as well, that may mean where they are has a chaotic magnetic field, which explains the compass spinning earlier. In an interview, Robert Rodriguez said how the Predators actually send their outcasts to this planet, and it's possible that they can win their way back into society by doing well here. So not only is it a kind of purgatory for the hunted, but it's also that kind of test for the hunters. I'll stop banging on about how everything's a purgatory though. Just kidding, I won't! On Stan's neck, we can also see a scorpion tattoo as well. Might be a reach, but I did wonder if this was a callback to the first movie. There we saw Max stab a scorpion off Dylan's back while a predator watched and recorded the event. We were also supposed to get a moment where Chichilo intimidates Edwin by saying how women pee, men piss, and then he just simply gets his stick out and unleashes. A shame we never got that or more of Chichilo in the movie, especially as they could have really hammed it up, I think, like they do in the Machete movies. We then see a drone flying overhead, and I did wonder if this was inspired by the war in the Middle East, which was really starting to make use of the technology. Stans and Mombasa then square off again, and it's kind of like the uneasy alliance that Blaine and Mac had with Dylan. Everything's broken up though, and we see as the hellhounds are unleashed. Chichilo says, which roughly translates to beasts of the devil. You might also notice that the creatures bleed red blood, as opposed to the luminous green of the predators. Because of this, it is possible that they're not from the same world and were picked up by the hunters to use in their games. This could also explain why their skull was there in Predator 2, as they're more of a trophy or creature to use than a domesticated pet. We see they operate like dogs, and not only do they hunt in packs, but the tracker also calls them off with a whistle. Royce then deduces that they're being tested, and then Chichilo's used as bait. I mean, I would say poor Chichilo, but the dude's a ruthless killer, so sod the lad. Never hit the thumbs up, I bet. Mombasa says how he'd done a similar thing back on Earth, which involved setting a trap and killing those who came to the rescue. It's something Drake of course tried as well, and highlights that predators are intelligent life forms beyond the hounds that they've just faced. They all think they should leave as he's finished, but Isabel puts him out his misery to end his suffering. She's nice like that. She only killed a mother holding her baby and not the baby, so she's nice like that. Royce, on the other hand, just wants to leave him.
We leave him.
Things come full circle at the end though when he returns to help Isabel. His instincts were right to not go there though, and Chichilo's already dead. The whole place is booby-trapped, and we see the cries just a recording which is similar to a duck call. Not going to go over all that again because we've talked about it in like all our Predator breakdowns so far, but yeah, they use these calls throughout the franchise to lure people in. Royce then deduces that if they keep running, they'll be picked off one by one. They're playing by the Predators' rules, and they need to become the Predators themselves. They need to become Predators. He said it! He said it! Following the dog tracks, they then find a jungle hunter strung up at a camp. We also see a couple of skulls, with the one on the left looking like a Neanderthal's. So it seems like the Predators have been using this place for a very, very long time, as they died out around 40,000 years ago. The director said he wanted this place to look like a painting by Bosch, and to basically be like how you'd imagine hell. We also see the Ucha skull on the floor, showing how it's not just the humans being hunted. Bodies are strung up and skinned, and it's a very grisly sight. Here we find the crucified predator also strung up on the totem. This design's based on that original Jungle Hunter designed by the legendary Stan Winston. Also, looks great on a t-shirt, and if you'd like to wear that, then check out our merch store right below the video. There we have not only that, but also our Game Over Xenomorph one as well. We've got loads of different designs like the Superman one, the Fantastic Four based around the NASA logo, and if you buy 3, you get 20% off. Thank you very much. The creature here is played by Derek Mears, and it's quite a big thing to see it just strung up like this. Now Playing brought up how around the time there was a big thing of like Jurassic Park 3, T-Rex is getting taken out by Spinosaurus, that sort of thing, where it was the new big thing replacing the old crap. It obviously hints at there being an even worse threat out there though, which is revealed in the Super Predators. The story behind their rivalries are actually told in that featurette on the Blu-ray, and that motion comic kind of goes into the history. It shows how the totems prepared for the Predator, and both the Falconer and Berserker attack the classic design. In the animation, the Predator also holds his blade like Billy. He then falls into the water like Dutch and almost gets into a mud flat before being crucified. Now Robert Rodriguez has clarified that the Super Predators were sent here as a punishment. They might even be bad bloods, which are basically outcasts who broke the Yucha code. They're much larger, aggressive, and do not care about the code or killing defenseless people. In a wide shot of the camp, you might also notice there's a cage in the corner with the doors wide open. Royce then bails as Mombasa is speared by an invisible threat from behind. We also see the Predator's glowing yellow eyes, which riff off their appearance in the first film. The group are then chased through the jungle, and I love the lasers that line the shot. They then tumble down a hill before going over a cliff and into some water. It's a retread of Dutch's fall in the first film before he came face to face with the creature. The jump was very intimidating though, as only locals on Hawaii had attempted it, and it was quite a big drop. In the behind the scenes stuff, we actually see the stuntmen do it, and it looks pretty wild. Good luck, mate. As they scramble to the surface, we then follow the drone, which returns to the camp as the hunters reveal themselves. Done in a one-er, I love how we travel from them and get the Predators turning off their cloak. Such a great reveal, and the perfect way to depict these bigger, badder foes. Now we first see the Falconer, portrayed by Brian Steele. His mask looks really cool, and the drone lands on his shoulder like a bird. We then see the Tracker, portrayed by Kerry Jones, who has hellhound tusks on his mask. Finally, we end with the reveal of the Berserker, or Mr. Black as the script calls him, which I did wonder if that was Rodriguez shouting out his mate Tarantino, but moving on. Originally he had spikes all over his armor and was kinda gonna look like Doomsday from DC. His helmet was also inspired by beetles. Now the concept art, that also shows that a female Predator was gonna be in this part. Ultimately that wasn't used though. In Yucha culture, they don't really tend to hunt and are more the mothers of the society, though there are some female clans. Before Nimrod joined, there was also the idea that the planet would house 200 predators. He basically said though that if one predator is so deadly, how would anyone dropped here survive? How would you stand a chance? Does kind of sound like it would be similar to how a single xenomorph was such a threat in Alien, only for there to be like countless numbers of them in Aliens. There though, they of course have weapons, whereas in Alien, they're completely unarmed. Yucha are just so different to xenomorphs though that I feel that Aliens treatment wouldn't really work. Now these creatures only took about 12 to 14 weeks to design and make. On the behind the scenes documentary, the classic Predators referred to as the cassette, whereas these super Predators were called the iPod Predators. During that and discussing all the different looks, we also had a version of Dutch in Predator gear. He was going to appear at the end to meet the survivors, but unfortunately Arnie couldn't make it. Again though, I do kind of wonder if he'll be brought back due to the events of Killer of Killers. This documentary also revealed how the super predators hunted for special DNA to evolve themselves, which is something that pops up in the Predator. Yay! Great movie! Excited to go over it. Make sure you subscribe for amazing movies. Our survivors then wash up, and Isabel's furious Royce purposely led them into the camp and then basically used them as bait. However, Royce at least knows a lot more about them. Isabel calls BS though, saying he's in it for himself. She says, "You set us up," which is what Dutch said to Dylan when they learned that the original mission was a bait and switch. Royce watched her reaction though, and saw she wasn't shocked by seeing an alien. We then get a reveal that she knows what these things are. She says how in 1987 a Spec Ops team went into the Guatemalan jungle with only one survivor making it out. You don't need me to tell you what that's in relation to. She says how murder was the key to killing it, which is vital information as Royce will use that to trick one at the end of the movie. It's just like when Anna provided the lore dump in that first film that the Yucha have been to Earth before. These had of course all been myths and rumours though, but organisations like the RWLF had been set up solely to tackle them. Royce then attempts what the Spec Ops tried back in the first movie, which is your classic kill box. Stan then says how when he's back home he wants to do a lot of Pepsi and R word so many women. Edwin acts like he's a bit of a weirdo, which he is a bit of a weirdo, but that's also him further playing up his cover. I love how even amongst the other killers, he knows fine well, it's easier to appear like that plant. Royce then kills a creature with his blade, again, just like how Mac killed a scorpion. Kind of plays up how dangerous the jungle is and how there's death around every corner. He then says how there's no hunting like the hunting of a man, which is Quoting Ernest Hemingway, he's clearly studied the mindset and somewhat knows how they think. He also knows the mistakes that people tend to make when they're being tracked and thus is able to level the playing field. Edwin then has to become bait as the creature chases after him. They think they're being hunted by the predators, but in the end, it's revealed to be the river ghost. It, like the humans, was brought to the planet to be hunted. Originally, it was supposed to play a big role in the movie, but as we see, this was cut down heavily. Personally, I feel that was the right decision as well. It's sort of like the space jockey in Alien, where you don't really need to know much about it. It's just a cool alien that your imagination does the work on. The sculptor Rosif Guyver inspired Greg Nicotero when it came to designing the creature, and he also looked at creatures from the movie The Island Earth. Nicotero also studied the original design for the Predator, which, if you've been following the channel, you know got adapted into the Yamengi. So it's really cool to see such a deep cut reference to that original movie. When it came to the costume, the time frame was tight with only 11 days being available to make the suit. Thus, they could only make one, and it basically meant they couldn't have any mistakes or tears while filming the scene. Kerry Jones aimed to make it so the creature would move and act like a creature taken from its home planet and just dumped somewhere in the jungle, which I think they executed really well. Job done. Originally, it was going to be found by a river, and it could barely be seen, which is why it was called the River Ghost. However, the name doesn't make too much sense in the final movie. Now, we then get a call back to this line by Mac in the first film.
Over here.
As we learn, Isabel missed when shooting it, and it was actually Roland who killed the creature. Call him Roland there, it's Ronald. Mixing the two names, Ronald Noland. I've fucked that name up in the script so many times, so we'll just call him Roland from now on. Revealing himself though, I really love this line.
What the fuck are you? I'm alive.
This plays off both the previous films, as both Dutch and Harrigan asked this of their predators. What the fuck are you? That was kind of thing, and then Danny Glover was like, what the fuck are you? Two spot impressions. Also, love how he has a kind of samurai type predator helmet. It fits the theme of a code of honor, except Ronald doesn't follow that at all. He's realized he can only rely on himself and just leaves people to die and then takes their stuff. Originally though, he looked a little different and kind of a bit more like a desert hunter. Like he even had a gun with two barrels. However, he has just one in this movie with him rocking a retrofitted plasma caster that's made to look like a shotgun. Now on Earth, he actually served in the air cavalry during the Vietnam War. Later on, he'd encounter a Yucha while working for the CIA. I love his unhinged betrayal, and he tells the group they're too loud, which is also what he said to Drake in the comics. Fishburne also clearly him doing a nod to Apocalypse Now. He of course starred in the movie, and this really feels like he's channeling Brando. Colonel Kurtz was going insane in the jungle and just rambling stuff off, having lost his mind, which he does here. He also starts to sing Ride of the Valkyries, which is the legendary song used in the film.
What a rush. Bum, ba, 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 ba. Bum, ba, ba, ba.
Like he even calls Stan's Agent Orange, referring to the chemical used throughout the war.
Agent Orange, you wanna put that down?
So it's clearly leaning into that, and he's now adept at surviving. And Lawrence Fishburne took on the role for this movie as he enjoyed working on 2009's Armored. However, Jeff Fahey was also considered for the role, which I can kind of see, to be honest. He'd of course recently featured in Lost, which also involved him being stranded in a tropical location. Taking them to his hideout, we can see a vessel that's become part of the mountain. I did initially think it might be a ship akin to the space jockeys, but it's just a gigantic drill that's been left behind. On top of that, the exterior also looks like the USS Sulaco used in Aliens. We see all the supplies that he salvaged, like the Claymore, and Nikolai uses that later on. The Claymore was even used in the first film, and you can spot it around the hour mark. There it was taken after they noticed it was tied to a trap, and then the humans took it to try and catch the predator. Mines are of course traps themselves, and I love how he gets some focus on Ronald's traps here. He's no clown. The Claymore was actually set up by Nikolai in a deleted scene, with Ronald saying how they're actually too smart for that. Similar to how the Claymore didn't take out the predator in the first movie. Either way, he's gone nuts, talks to himself, but he explains that there's basically two different types of predators on the planet. A blood feud's happening, and we do start to see that rivalry playing out. He says that when one of the group of them's killed, everything's fine for a bit, and then the next season they come back smarter and stronger. Nikolai thinks they're trying to evolve, and I do wonder if they're doing it to basically become the dominating Yucha. Royce also asks how they return, which is when he reveals there's a ship near the camp. Unable to fly it himself, he spent the first 3 seasons trying to walk to the edge of the preserve, but there was no edge.
Brilliant idea. Brilliant. The whole time I've been here, it never occurred to me to commandeer the alien spacecraft. I wouldn't know how to fly it. He would. Of course, you know how to fly. I'll give it a shot.
Now, it turns out that he's been stalking them all this time, and he saw the fight going down at the camp. I did even wonder if it was him who Mombasa spotted in the tree, and he was the one hiding out watching them. We then see Nikolai share a picture of his kids, and Stans has a bizarre tattoo of his sister with giant tits. Like, you what, mate? Walton Goggins, you know, he often plays bizarre characters like this, and yeah, kind of feel like he springs out from this.
Is that your girlfriend?
It's my sister.
In a deleted scene, he actually tried it on with Isabel and then got brutally rejected. Kind of a meaningless scene there, so yeah, I can totally see why they cut it. Hanzo then explains how the hunt's gone on for a very, very long time, as the samurai sword's extremely old. As we know from Killer of Killers, they hunted in feudal Japan and may have even picked it up there. It's also potentially how Ronald got the stylized samurai helmet. Hanzo reveals he can also speak English, but has learned to keep his mouth quiet due to speaking too much. Isabel then explains how when her spotter was captured and slaughtered, she simply hid away and watched on. Because of this, I kind of feel like she's been seeking redemption and does this through her actions in the film.
I wish I pulled that trigger.
This is likely why she shot Chichilo and also stays for Edwin, but she should have just left him. Royce, however, comes up with a plan to get the crucified predator and use it to go out and escape the planet. Enemy of my enemy type thing. They're interrupted as smoke starts to appear in their quarters and they work out that Ronald's trying to kill them. Not a great plan, as they can see the smoke and the guy could have just killed them in their sleep or something, or lured them into a trap. Playing into the enemy of my enemy ideas though, Royce decides to alert the predators to their location. He also says,
Say goodbye to your little friend.
which is clearly a play on "Say hello to my little friend" from Scarface. Ronald then meets his end as he runs into a super predator. I don't know why he didn't grab his cloak or like do anything other than this plan, because I would have loved to have seen him be in the movie much longer, but yeah, just one of those things. The whole sequence though reminds me heavily of the Alien franchise. The cramped corridors and tense moments are like the colonial marines in Hadley's Hope, or even the smugglers running from the xenomorphs in Alien Resurrection. Both breakdowns on the channel now, stop spamming other breakdowns. There's also the flare usage, which is something that's become a staple of these kinds of films. Edwin is left behind, and he then comes face to face with the Predator. I do wonder if he'd have been spared due to not having a weapon, and it walks towards him slowly rather than immediately just pouncing. I do think it would have killed him though, but yeah, either way, this kind of feels like the subway scene from Predator 2. Saved by Nikolai, he then says, according to IMDb trivia, this is actually Russian for "you one ugly motherfucker." It's said by Dutch at the end of the first movie, in case you couldn't tell, and also by Mike Harrigan in Predator 2. It's a nice little Easter egg there. Well done, Nikolai, mate. Well, you bloody love your Russian Easter eggs. Interestingly, Oleg actually voiced his dub lines for the Russian release as well. He goes out in a blaze of glory and takes the creature down. Feels like it sort of riffs off Vasquez and Gorman's death in Aliens, as both use explosives just as they're about to die. Gloating that they killed him, Stans is then tasered. This leads to Royce being held at laser point and accepting his fate. You might remember that the original trailer actually had a shot where there were several lasers on him, but they ended up cutting that scene, obviously. I do kind of feel like that moment was just for the trailer though, because yeah, there's not even that many predators in the film. Stans then makes his stands and then gets his spine ripped out in one fell swoop. The creature then does a battle cry, which feels like it's riffing off this similar moment in Predator 2. Goggins even looks like Bill Paxton in this moment, and the Predator there did that cry after ripping out his spine. The rest then attempt to make their escape, and it looks so cool as we see one of the Predators appear behind the Berserker. Their footprints are tracked with his vision mode, and I always kind of felt like it inspired the detective mode in the Arkham games. Running to a grassy field, it feels like something they later referenced in Prey when Naru and her brother escape. Hanzo decides to fight against the Falconer and basically does a Billy to buy them some time to get to the chopper.
Get to the ship!
Both of course use a blade, but whereas we cut away there, we get to see the pair duking it out here. According to Yucha rules, one must fight an opponent in the spirit that they're challenged at. So if a guy draws a sword, you have to fight them the same way. It's also pretty similar to King Willie standing up to fight against the city hunter, only to be gruesomely beheaded. The scene was extended on the Blu-ray as Royce looks back and says they're still coming.
They're still coming.
It's easily my favourite scene of the film though, especially with the long grass and the wind blowing through. It's just very art house. It's reminiscent of like the duel scene in Harakiri. What's great as well is that Hanzo bests the creature, but he also succumbs to his wounds. This scene would live on in spirit in Killer of Killers, as mentioned before, yeah, same guy doing the voices. Watching the remaining gang run through the forest, we then see as Edwin gets stuck in a trap. Edwin says it's lucky it didn't hit his artery, but that wasn't the purpose of the trap. This was simply to maim and slow him down. Because of this, he's now become a liability, and Royce wants to cut him loose. We then get another clue about how he's more sinister than he's letting on. He says how he has kids, and then pulls out a photo. However, if you are paying attention, this is actually the one that Nikolai showed them before. So it means he took this treasured memory of his saviors and is now using it to manipulate the others. Royce suggests booby trapping Edwin, but she shows mercy and wants to protect him. Though Royce does that in the end. Royce then somewhat repeats the ideas of Ronald.
They want you to feel something for this man. To be human.
And what are you?
Alive.
Edwin then says,
You should have gone with them.
I know.
this is kind of playing his hand, and in hindsight, yeah, he's basically telling her she made a mistake. We then get Royce going to the jungle hunter as he attempts to form an alliance. He's the only one who can take him to the ship and the only one who can pilot it. At first glance, it seems like a wild prospect that a member of the Jungle Hunters clan would even team up with a human. However, there have been instances of this in the past. In Alien vs Predator the movie, we learned how the humans would worship their each other like gods. Humans bred xenomorphs for the predators to hunt, with the scene being probably like the standout moment in that film. I guess something good had to come out of it at least. That film also had Alexa Woods teaming up with the Predator Scar. Raphael Adolini was also a pirate whose crew turned on him and he teamed up with the Predator, which is how that iconic pistol became part of the franchise. That's appeared in Predator 2 and Prey, and also Predator Killer of Killers, and it basically shows, yeah, humans and predators can work together. After surviving the events of the first Aliens vs Predator comic series, Machiko Noguchi was also invited to Top Knot's clan to work with them. The comics also feature people like Captain Glass, Ash Parnell, and Ahab teaming with the Predators. So it makes sense that a Predator would team up with a human, even though I know at the time people were like, what the hell is going on? But yeah, they need to get off the planet, and it's, yeah, there is the groundwork there in the source material. I love as it puts on its armor and then shows Earth on its gauntlet. This highlights how it's clearly been here before, and it's of course a favorite hangout of the creatures. The wrist map was also used in 2004's Alien vs Predator, as a map of the hunting temple was shown there. He then decloaks his ship, and we see as Royce runs to it. He even leaves behind his Predator pal. This ending always kinda reminded me of Pitch Black, and how Riddick returns after making it to the ship. We then see Predator vs Predator, with the latter one unmasking. Kinda feels like its face lays the groundwork for the feral predator that would then show up in Prey. The ship then takes off, and we see as Edwin and Isabella taken in a net. Isabel sees this as her chance to make amends for the past, as she says that when the time comes, she'll make it quick. It's a callback to Hicks saying, if it comes to that, I'll do us both, to Ripley and Aliens. As mentioned earlier, she regrets how she didn't try and save or end the suffering of her spotter, and is making amends for the past. That's something I feel all the characters do as well. Stans, Hanzo, and Nikolai, they all died saving others, even though they lived dishonorably. They all created an honorable code in the end, and it's something that Royce develops as well. On the flip side of this, Edwin's just doubling down on the negative aspects of his personality. Bro became the villain again after doing that in Spider-Man 3. Bet he's sitting in hell like, dear God, please kill Royce. It's here though that Edwin finally reveals who he is, and he uses the poison from the plant before. Turns out he's just as sadistic as Stans is, and wants her paralyzed while he has his way. He's the real predator in all of this, and they kind of play off the meaning that it has regarding abuse. Topher Grace is really great here though, and I think he pulls off that meek man that then switches on a dime. He kind of takes over the role of Ronald, in that there's someone who seems nice on the outside, but he'll turn on you in a second. Now Edwin didn't actually expect to be saved at all, but he switches back to his meek persona to get help out the pit. He basically blames the Predators and says that they're the ones who paralyzed Isabel. Royce has come back though because he's had a change of heart and seems to actually have developed an appreciation for the fact that she tried to help the others. Topher Grace and keeps the cadence and speech of when he was in a dominant position, and this is something that kind of signals to Royce that something's off. Stopping him before he can poison him, he then uses him as bait. Now the pair actually had a deleted scene where Royce would grab him and interrogate him to find out the truth. I think when it's just filling in what the audience already know though, you're probably better off cutting it. At one point in it, Royce even suspects that Edwin had something to do with them being brought to the planet, but yeah, it's all kind of just waffle and yeah, better to cut it. What we did garner from it though is that Edwin actually revealed he was addicted to hallucinogenic drugs. He was working on a woman on the operating table and then went crazy because he imagined her waking up and attacking him, so he killed her. That sounds kind of like a goofy backstory though, so yeah, I can totally see why they took it out. You will sometimes hear of serial killers practicing as nurses and doctors though, and he was basically an angel of death on the ward. He's then used much like Chichilo, and Royce ambushes the beast, very much flipping the dynamics of before. Also, love how his final words are,
I'm one of you.
but really, the Predator just sees him as pathetic. Like that backstab and then him just whimpering, that always stuck with me. Edwin basically gets the wrong idea, and though he thinks he's top of the food chain, he's basically just bait. What Royce does is put grenades on him, and it's basically an opposite to Nikolai. He used the claymore to go out like a total badass saving people, while Edwin has a whimpering death and is basically used as a tool by a better person. The final sequence here of course also pays homage to Dutch's final stand against the jungle hunter. We see Brody covered in mud, and say what you want, yeah, the guy got ripped. He then says,
I'm here, kill me. No. Do it now, kill me.
which is of course a nod to this.
Come on. Do it. Do it. Come on. Come on. Kill me. I'm here. Kill me.
Royce then sparks up a fire and the heat completely masks him. He also uses an axe, which is a primitive weapon akin to Dutch using a bow and arrow. The trick doesn't fully work this time though, as the berserker manages to see his heartbeat and he uses sound since he's unable to see him, which shows how smart these hunters can be. Held in a chokehold, Royce is saved by Isabel and she finally gets to take that shot to save a partner. Isabel getting hit with a wrist blade is also similar to how the Predator shot his blades by the side of Dutch's head. Royce then smashes him like the like button and its mask's knocked off, revealing its face. During this, its arm's cut off as well, so it can't fire the nuke. This is just like how Mike chopped off the city hunter's arm so he couldn't do the same thing in Predator 2. In the end, Royce then introduces himself.
I'm Royce.
A man and woman surviving also somewhat plays off the first film, as their Dutch and Anna were the only ones who made it out. As the day hits, we then get similar visual iconography to what the jungle was like after the explosion the first time round. There we had the white smoke burning, along with the ash, which is akin to what we get here. They've lived to survive another day, but there's no escape for them, as we see more people and also the hound cages landing in the jungle. The hunt isn't over. Now when I first saw this, I did wonder whether they were going to help or basically do a Ronald and scavenge what they could. Royce says they'll attempt to find a way to get off the planet though, and we cut to black hearing the Predator clicking. The grim endings are encountered by Long Tall Sally playing over the credits. It's a nice touch as it's the same song that played on the helicopter when Dutch's team went into the jungle. But what happened next? Well, the next movie in the franchise is The Predator. Yay! Can't wait. Starting it right away as soon as I stop recording. Oh me. Alright, you want to know about these guys? Well, the comic Predators Strangers in a Strange Land filled in what happened to the survivors after the credits rolled. A few weeks after the end of the movie, the pair have split up and gone their separate ways. However, Royce seeks Isabel out due to being weak and at death's door. She nurses him back to health after an encounter, and the pair kiss. They think it's game over, man, when a predator appears. However, it just leaves a suit of armor which fits him perfectly. It even has a helmet that displays things in English, which is thoughtful. A four-armed predator then arrives and attacks them both. They escape and hide behind a waterfall, and we even get them called Ugly, which is a franchise staple again. It's almost a repeat of the showdown from the film, but this time he's not really on the back foot. The pair take it out, and they manage to unlock the ship through using the armor. Isabel then heads back to Earth, whereas Royce flies off to hunt more predators. the game Predator Hunting Grounds then tells you via voice log collectibles what happened from that point. Isabel then went on to join the newly reformed OWF, and she was recruited by Sean Keyes. That is the son of Keyes from Predator 2, who was killed saving Mike. He would appear in The Predator played by Jake Busey, and Gary Busey played Keyes in Predator 2, so nice little bit of casting there. Best bit of the movie. Now, there was actually a lot of interest in making a sequel or even a prequel. Rodriguez said one of the ideas he'd like to do is show Ronald's time on the planet before the movie. As of now though, that's never gotten off the ground. Just like Ronald, eh? So on to The Predator we go. As for this though, I think it's a really solid entry that lives and breathes the original, but sends the lore and world building forward. It's a shame we never saw Royce again, but with the idea of the animated Predator movies, maybe we can see that in the future. Again, whatever happens, I'd love to see an Avengers sort of team up in an Aliens vs Predator movie that brings across all the big names from across both franchises. Even if it was an animated Killer of Killers sequel, I still think that would work really well. And make it so we're not dealing with the fact that most of the actors have aged now. Give me Arnie, give me Ripley clone, give me Mike Harrigan, mate, give me Royce, give me Naru. That would be bloody insane. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video and let me know all your thoughts below. Please drop a like and drop a comment on how much you love the Predator movie and why it's your favourite movie. If you want to follow us on Instagram as well and keep up to date with what we're doing, then check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel, you lucky sons of a bitches, you also get early access to videos. If you click the join button, you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else. Costs just 99 cents a month. Do it for a month, yeah? See if you enjoy it, getting all these early, basically videos that send you to sleep, I'll be honest. But it's quite a cheap insomniac cure. So yeah, get that, and you'll probably get like 6 videos for 99 pence early, so do it, please. Now if you want something else to watch, mate, we've got bloody loads of Predator breakdowns on screen right now. You want a bit of Predator 2? You want a bit of the original movie? We've got you covered, so yeah, head over there right after this. With that out of the way though, thank you for sticking through this video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time, you son of a bitch, Dylan, you son of a bitch!